This podcast is supported in part by Carolina Forward, a nonpartisan organization that advocates for ideas, policies, and values to build a stronger North Carolina, one that works for all its people as a strong, diverse, multiracial democracy. For more on them, visit carolinaforward.org. All right, welcome back to the Foxfire Dispatch, y'all. Small sparks, big change, building a better South. I'm your co-host Liz, here with a very, very special guest today. She's someone who has been reshaping what it means to organize in North Carolina, who has her eyes set squarely on beating MAGA politics here at home. Anderson Breeze Clayton, the North Carolina Democratic Party chair, youngest, best state party chair in the country. Anderson, welcome to the Foxfire Dispatch.
I'm so happy to be here, and you're too kind, Liz Purvis. Thank you for all that you do in Granville County. We appreciate you for it.
Thanks. How's your August been? I feel like you've been all over the place. We're closing out summer. It's about to be the end of watermelon milkshake season at Cookout.
I know. I'm depressed about that one. I think it's been busy, honestly. All over the place is a correct sort of analysis of what we've been doing, but the state party's been busy. We have been fighting both fronts on trying to repair voter registration forms that Trump's DOJ has come in and challenged from the State Board of Elections angle, from that to municipal elections that are happening right now, and folks that are getting out to vote across North Carolina already from those elections. And so it's just been a hectic time, along with the rural tour too. So a lot going on.
How many stops has the rural tour had already? It's got to be like over a dozen.
It's at 36 right now. We're headed and we're on our way to 54, probably going to be 55. And I'll be honest, I thought I was going to get done with this tour by the end of September, and it's going to run a little bit into October because of some of the counties that came to me and were like, "Well, why are we not on this list?" And I was like, "Well, it doesn't mean that we don't want to come to you. It just means that there's sort of an official thing going on." They're like, "Well, we want to be official too." And I'm like, "Okay."
You gotta love when people are like, I would like to get involved. I'm jumping on the train you're on. I want to be riding it too.
It shows the energy, right, that's everywhere for county parties, and I think it's been honestly really cool. Like Jones County, we've been out in northeastern North Carolina a lot, but Jones County, for the first time in 45 years, has got an active Democratic county party in it, and it was so cool to go out there and sort of see people that they were like, "We've never done this before," and they said, "We've never organized, like, before an election," and I said, "Oh, goodness," but it means we're on the right track now, right? And I think that there is a lot of investment opportunities that we've got to do there in terms of our time and our energy, especially on the organizing front. But there's opportunities like that all over North Carolina still, and that's what it means to build a strong 100-county state party. And I think that's what we're headed towards.
I think so too. And when you get a county party off the ground like that, there's going to be an exponential return on that investment if done right, right? Because you're going from like relatively nothing, no activity to something, right? And that's better than it has been. And that's how you build community and start making those connections and start playing in the races.
Yeah, I mean, honestly, it's a slow build, and I think I always told folks that it wasn't going to necessarily be a 2-year rebuild of a state party. We're looking at more of a 10-year process, and I think also even further along than that. And it takes really good people stepping up at a local level that are willing to serve their communities in a way that I just don't think that we've seen before. We have so many good county party chairs across the state this year. We have so many good precinct chairs across the state this year, and new members that I think are just excited to get involved. We just got done doing a monthly donor call earlier this evening, and we had 2 of our local municipal candidates this year on there. Councilwoman Kimberly Wasson, who's running for the mayor of Statesville right now, and also Dalton George, who is the mayor pro tem in Boone, but is now running for mayor of Boone. Both of them were just so exciting in the ways that they were talking about their communities and the opportunities for affordable housing, for sustainability, for preserving the environment, and the things that they're doing at a local level. And I think it's so inspiring to see how the county parties are helping their campaigns and also organizing with them and making sure that we're doing what we need to do to get out everybody this year at the local level.
I'm so glad to see that happening. Also love that Dalton was on that call. Dalton's great. He came and chatted with Gina a couple weeks ago. I was passing through Catawba County, seeing family because that's where I grew up. And at the same time, they were doing a Meet the Candidates event this past week. And so got to drag my mom to there meet the candidates event. I was like, "Come on, you can" they live outside the city limits, but I was like, "But you could meet the people and you could talk to other people." And we got to
And you
meet
know
this
somebody lives inside the city limits, right?
yeah, you know somebody that lives inside the city limits. And there's a really young woman, Park Inglefield, who's running for Hickory mayor to challenge
Mhm.
the Republican because nobody else was running. And it was so cool to meet her and chat about her race a little bit and see a packed house at the Catawba County Democrats headquarters on a Thursday night, something like that.
No, I think that my shout out Michael McLam and all the folks that are doing such an incredible job up there. But I think it's got to be community led. And that's what we're seeing all over the state right now is like packed headquarters and also just like on college campuses. You know, all of our campuses went back to school, or at least within the UNC system earlier this week. And North Carolina State University, all of our college Dems out there were talking about how they had a packed room of college Dems that were so excited to get involved and help out races that were red to blue races and stuff like that this year across the state. And I think there's an energy there, and I think that while a lot of people are really scared and disappointed right now, right, in what's happening federally, I think there's also an excitement and a lot of people that are organizing their backyards to believe that there's hope in community. And I think that's just like something that's really cool, and it's what's powering me through August, right? Like the month itself has been long, there's been a lot going on, but I think seeing that happen across the state, it is progress from where we've been as a party in the past, I think.
It definitely is. I think people moving towards action is always a positive step. And I think you're right. A lot of people are scared. It is a really scary time. But I also think there's a growing crew that's like, I refuse to let this make me freeze. I refuse to let this paralyze me into inaction. And I think about this Rebecca Solnit quote about how joy is also an act of resistance. That's part of the work too, not being completely miserable while you try to make the change.
Yeah, definitely.
I know we started a little bit at home. I feel like because it just happened not half an hour before we got on, I would be remiss if I did not ask you. But the Texas legislature did pass their corrupt and gerrymandered maps, and I believe that they did something to prevent them from having to need to come back and vote on it again tomorrow, perhaps. So, what what are you thinking about this situation and like what it says for us and for the country, like generally?
I think that, at least from what I understand, California is going to come back in and do the exact same thing. What I've told folks, this is unprecedented. While Central Texas still needs disaster relief from flooding and the immense amount of recovery efforts that still need to happen in areas that are rural in parts of the state that people still have not seen probably some of state relief into or even federal relief into, because we also know that from Western North Carolina and seeing people try to politicize natural disasters. And that is what Greg Abbott and Texas Republicans did by allowing a special session to occur to begin with, anyway. But I think what we saw was Democrats fight back on the front of leaving the state and trying to not allow this gerrymandering to occur. But when you live in a minority and also a state legislature like we see in Texas right now, I think it was really hard for them to be able potentially to maybe keep this up, or also there's something else underlying there that I'm unaware of. But I just think it's important to understand like they did their due diligence in this and the ability to fight back as much as they have. What we're also seeing right now is the fact that people are going to go mano a mano for a while, or at least states are when it comes to redistricting. You're going to see Texas, California, Illinois, other states, maybe New York, re gerrymander themselves essentially. And I think that the only place that we're going to be able to really expand a map in the country is looking at North Carolina. And so I think that our job is to also focus on what can we do here at home to be able to help a nation and be able to help political parties come back from this. And that looks like taking back our state Supreme Court, the importance of our courts, and just the magnitude in which our Supreme Court elections in both 26 and in 28 are going to reshape the country. It's so relevant to everything that's happening right now. Hakeem Jeffries would be Speaker of the House if North Carolina had not been a gerrymandered state. And I think it's important for folks to sort of realize that, yes, this is a problem. Yes, it's going to happen in Texas. Yes, it's going to happen in California, but also North Carolina in your own backyard, you could actually do something about it here. And so it's not a hopeless situation, at least for people in this state, to be able to actually have power in reshaping where the map can expand in 2028 and beyond.
Yeah, and if you got a little extra energy to give outside of Justice Anita Earl's Supreme Court race, there are some congressional races in some long shot districts, but possible districts coming up. I know CD13, which is like a lot of Granville County, it will have a primary, but it's got some good candidates coming up for that role. If you're listening to this, you're like, how do I do something? There are so many good races to get involved in. Please pick one or several.
I think you're right, though, of that there are a lot of really, really good congressional candidates that have stepped up to run. We're going to have, honestly, primaries in probably all of our congressional races this year, which is something that North Carolina Democrats have not had since 2018 cycle. And I think that just goes to show you like the quality and the caliber of candidates that we have across the state are going to make it so that there's going to be a lot of competitive races and places that, to your point, people don't really know what's possible in some of these areas, right? Like you may have NC 11 on the map, NC 13, NC 7, NC 9. Like there are so many good people that I think have stepped up to run. There's potential everywhere, especially when you have congressional candidates that sold out 670,000 people in the state of North Carolina to lose their health insurance after 2026.
Yeah, no, I'm glad we've got some good candidates running in those races. I'm glad that we will not be leaving any congressional seats on the table in 2026 for sure. And that's clearly so important with everything that's going on in Texas and the gerrymandering, but still very much related to North Carolina's role in all this. Like, I know you kind of mentioned it earlier. I know it feels objectively true that in some ways North Carolina is like a tipping point as we go, so goes the country kind of state. What's your vision for how we compete and win?
I think it's about competing everywhere. And the type of programs that we run have got to be encompassing of a state that has the second highest rural population than any other state in the country other than Texas, that has major metro areas across it, like about 10 of them, right? That sort of have population densities. Like we are not a state that looks like Michigan. We're not a state that looks like Georgia or Virginia, even, or like a Pennsylvania or Wisconsin. I think North Carolina is a very unique state. And in 2026, we're going to have the opportunity to really highlight the US Senate race that we have up and the competitiveness of being able to help take back the US Senate through North Carolina, and also the most important Supreme Court race. And so I think that that's going to be helpful to preparing us for 28 when we're going to have 22 statewide races on the ballot, and the most out of any state in the country for statewide races, and looking at how we can actually adjust like our talking points about down ballot races and helping educate people across the nation and also across our state. There is so much on your ballot in an election year like a presidential one. And right now, utilizing 26 to really be the opportunity to focus on the Supreme Court and down ballot races for the Senate race and the or the North Carolina House of Representatives, I mean, in that sense, and just like our state legislature, I think it's just building up for every election cycle after that too, to make sure that people understand down ballot is where we're actually we put a huge priority, because that's what's oftentimes getting overlooked by a huge apparatus in the party.
Yeah, I feel like you and I very much know there are so many great reasons to dive into these races. There are so many great, good candidates to get excited about that are just like good people and policy wonks and decent humans. But for the North Carolinians who are feeling disillusioned or politically homeless, who are not seeing those things that we're seeing, what's your pitch to those people who have stopped voting or are not seeing reasons to show up?
I think I want to know what their issue is. And a lot of people might look at me and say they don't have one. And I think that I can look at you and say, well, I can come up with five that probably impact your life and you may not be thinking about it. And whether that goes from the fact that rent caps right now aren't allowed to be implemented by city councils or county commissions in a city or in a county because a state legislature prevents them from doing so. So if your rent's been raised every single year and there's nothing that your local elected officials can do about it, like changing a law at a state legislative level can be important for that. But I think it's educating people about that, because not many people are actually talking about what prevents or what keeps things happening to me, instead of actually helping me understand the system that I'm in right now, even if people can't necessarily do something about it. And I also think talking to people about the fact that, we've got 7.25 minimum wage in North Carolina that matches the federal minimum wage. That's not been raised in 20 years because of the fact that state legislatures refuse to do it. Like, we could change that any point in time at the local level. It doesn't have to be something that's implemented federally for us to be able to raise wages and have people that work service jobs right now to make more than what they do. It could happen at the state if they choose to. And I feel like more of that ownership and placing it on Republicans more and more is going to be our job this year and next year. And to help people understand that, bills that Duke Energy right now is pushing Republicans to pass are raising your energy rates, that tariffs that Donald Trump is implementing are not making your grocery prices cheaper, they're making them more expensive. There's a huge opportunity, I think, to just help people understand why things are happening the way that they are. And that also helps people not feel so politically homeless, I think, in some sense, too, because people need to know. I think it's about having a conversation with people. I don't expect to win them back overnight. And I think that a lot of what we have to do is run candidates that they can see themselves in. And that means at a local level, a state level, but also a federal one, too.
People are not a monolith, right? We all got our own reasons for the positions that we have. If you had to bust one myth about the North Carolina Democratic Party and what it really does here in North Carolina, what would it be?
We're not the people that you see on television in the sense of everybody right now is looking for the party, I think, to run ads. And as much as I would love to be the one that's like out there flashy, it costs a lot of money. I think that the myth is that like we have so much money that it's coming out of our ears. And I get why people think that because they saw $3 million spent on or $3 billion spent on a presidential election last year. They see Roy Cooper raise $3 million in a day or in 24 hours, and they're like, okay, now we're like, where's the money? And I think that for me, it's helping people understand that a state party is like a small business. And that's the best comparison that I can give to a lot of people is that, every bit of what we do is sort of it's a fundraising process. And so I feel like I'm a development director for the state party. I do call time. I ask people for money to make sure that we can have and hire staff and put people on the ground across the state that can really be in communities and build power year round because I think that's really important. Like, I think that when people look at me and they say, what's the best way to get young people involved with the party? I want to look at them and be like, give them a job in the party. Because when you start helping people and paying their bills, that's when folks are like, oh, this party is the one working for me. Like, but you're going to see the party take the ground war and the candidates take the air war. And so a lot of what you also see from ads are not necessarily like parties, they are Republican or Democratic PACs or IEs, which are independent expenditures. And so I just think there's this big myth that like the party's got a lot of money, they're just not putting it on the air and like we just can't see it or that like we're not getting our message out there enough in that way. And to me it's like, well, we can't really do that. We're not the ones that have the funding to. I know that's a little bit complicated for people to understand sometimes, but it's what I've learned being in this job for 2.5 years.
Yeah, I mean, it's so interesting listening to folks' opinions about the messaging or the perception of the lack thereof because it's like, well, I'm plugged in at the tab, baby. I'm getting that digital content thing weekly. Are we posting it all the time? No. Can we do better? Yes, but like it's there. It's coming into my inbox from the North Carolina Democratic Party, and I'm getting that content and encouraging other people to share it out. It feels all encompassing in the social circles that I am in, but obviously, algorithms being what they are, other people are in completely different spaces.
Yeah.
Um,
I mean, it's like how you reach people, right? Like right now, I tell people look at me and they're like, the Democratic Party's got a messaging problem. And I'm like, you mean we have a reaching people problem? We don't have a messaging problem. I think that a lot of people could tell you, like, our message is supposed to be, right, helping working families, which means we're lowering costs for people, we're raising wages, we're unionizing workplaces, like, we are uplifting working people. But it's like getting that to folks, Democrats have not invested in as heavily as we needed to a media infrastructure. Democrats for so long sat there and said we didn't want to create our own propaganda machines. And I'm like, meanwhile, Republicans have gone out and done that, in my opinion. Like they created Fox News, they created, talk radio. You have Rupert Murdoch and Rush Limbaugh. And I'm like, both of these two people sat there and created how people receive and get content. And it's like, that is empowered right now by people like Mark Zuckerberg. You've got the opportunities to have millionaires and billionaires that are bowing at the feet of Donald Trump right now who only want to push right-wing Republican content on socials because that's also helping. the Republican landscape at this moment. Thomas Mills has got a really good saying. He's like, Democrats were buying television ads when Republicans were buying television stations. And I just think it's so relevant to all that we're seeing right now because Republicans have been just better to me about doing some of that investment in media infrastructure and also in field. And like we have to do both and in order to create sustainable parties. And I just think that it's not necessarily that they've done that with the party, they've done that with a person. And that's where I think the Republican Party is going to have a short end of a stick right here very soon. But it's like Democrats have also got to get on an angle of aggressively thinking about how do we reach people that are not, to your point, they're not thinking about politics. They don't want to. Actually, they've turned off the news because they're so tired of hearing about it. And their families don't want to hear about it. Nobody wants to talk about it right now. And it's then like, how do you reach those people when they are self selecting what their content is and how they're getting information right now if they're not watching the news or anything else?
Yeah, that feels like the struggle, right? And if we crack that, then we will be paving a way towards some kind of electoral success.
Well, it takes like building up audiences, right? Like the rural tour stops that I do, I was shocked at how many people were like, I saw you on TikTok. Like I came out because I follow you on the internet. I'm sort of like I've tried to build up, right? And the party's built up a platform. And I think it's important for like you have to keep growing that platform and that brand. And especially in a day and age like this, you have to invest in it in some ways too. And I think that that's sometimes where Democrats get a little bit like, oh, we can't do that in so many ways. But I agree with you about voter registration. I think that the hardest part about that right now is that you also see in North Carolina because we've got semi-closed primaries, right? People are really attached to being unaffiliated. Like the more I talk to people about registering as a Democrat, they're sort of like, well, the party establishment. And I'm sort of like, I think it's because our generation also really hates the man, right? And like, regardless if you're the Democratic Party or the Republican Party right now, you're considered the man to like the entire, I think, sort of, and this is me generalizing, and I always tell people not to do this, so I am calling myself out ahead of time, but it's like Gen Z and millennials, I think, are sort of like the man we are against. And it's like the youth population is sort of like anti a system and like political parties are systems as much as we hate to be that and as much sometimes as I hate to consider that I'm like no I'm an organization and I'm trying to grow and I want to but I've tried to make my organization a place where like unaffiliateds feel welcome and so I say like Dems and friends a lot because I'm like I know that in every space I walk into right now there's at least one unaffiliated in the room. I'm never just around sole Democrats and I think it's adapting our language and also not being because that's how you gain, like, to your like, how your mom felt, right? Like, it's how you gain voter registration is also how welcome you can make people feel in a party, and it is also going out and doing voter registration programming, but I think that also gets into a monetary sort of expense to that too, and there's parts of where we've seen voter registration also be done more by nonpartisan organizations that I think also, like, that's sort of also why people register unaffiliated is just because of where you see voter registration happening right now. Republicans are just trying to make a big point out of it in North Carolina because they're like, oh, this is the one way that we're going to beat Democrats. And I'm like, no, voter registration doesn't tell you everything about a person. And I think that's also important.
Mm. Yeah, no, that is important. And I think those nonpartisan groups also have a little bit more luck sometimes going into spaces and doing voter registration work than like overtly partisan. I know we've run into some barriers like at our local community college trying to register voters there and things like that. And like the schools will allow League of Women Voters to come into the high schools to register kids, but we can't do that as the county party. And it also probably just varies widely county to county and made up of people making individual decisions. I'm also curious, what would you consider your proudest accomplishment over the past couple years as chair and or like hardest lesson you've learned?
I think the thing I wanted to do the most as a state party chair is have a year round organizing staff and also have a group of people at the state party that really cared about building a party and being there for county parties. Because I think that to me, coming up in this world as a county party chair and also as a field organizer, I just really valued that side of this work. If I had unlimited amounts of money, it would be amazing to have an organizer in every county and one that was dedicated to making sure that people saw the possibility in their backyards. I just think that for a long time, I grew up not really understanding what was in Roxborough or in Person County and what I could do there and how I could make an impact. And I think that's because our party for a long time has really prioritized nationalizing our party. Like the goal of a DNC is to get the president elected. And it's like, well, it's also about getting good people down the ballot elected too. And our party should also be focused on that at every level. And I think for me, keeping on and having the amount of staff that we do, we're one of the, I think at least right now, regardless, is like Virginia and New Jersey have coordinated campaigns this cycle because obviously they've got an on year election year. So their campaigns and their state parties look bigger. But when you have just like what their state parties sort of contain year round, we're about the third largest state party in the country. And I think that that has been a huge development that we have maintained. And North Carolina Dems were only ever used to having about 7 staff in a odd year like we're in right now. That's been really important to making sure that we're investing in people across the state. And it's also people that are from North Carolina, which I think is the most important thing too. It's like your homegrown talent and making sure that we're keeping people in politics year round because I think that campaigns are so finite that a state party should be the place where like your talent reservoir is in some ways. And my dream is to be able to like build that up and have enough staff in that sense to do that. But I just think it'd be that, and it would be doing it while we also had one of the hardest legal battles going on that a state party could have gone through in the last 2 years. And that was just one of the most challenging things. I think the lesson that I've learned being a young person in this job is never be afraid to ask as many people as possible for help because you never know where you're going to find it. And being honest with people about what you're dealing with and the realities of it. Like, I think a lot of people try to close a curtain when it looks like, oh, we're struggling with money, we're struggling with figuring out X, Y, or Z. And I've always tried to be a transparent chair. And I've been like, no, 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 no. You let me show you, like, let me pop the hood. Like, let me show you what's here. And so you can also understand like what we're doing and how it like how money actually works in a party and also then like how the programs work in a party too, because I think that's been helpful to get people's buy-in into seeing, oh, they're building, they're growing, and also what they're doing is working for local county party building and also energizing people to get more involved with county parties, which is really the job of a state party, I think.
For those listening, I think it's been cool this year, really this year, to see some of that information dissemination happen as somebody who is on the state executive committee and has been for a couple of years. I think it's really cool how open you guys have been about running this like a business, thinking about really intentional financial strategy and operation strategy, and really letting a relatively large group of people into what that information is has been really cool to see.
Yeah, I think I really wanted for those listening that are like an executive council, sort of like my board of directors or my board of trustees, if you can imagine it in a state party, but people that are either appointed or elect. I really wanted to have a lot of county chairs on there this year because I think that it's important for the people that are closest to the grassroots of our party that are oftentimes, and Liz knows this, like the unpaid laborers of our party, the people that are doing this and they're also doing another job or they're doing something that like they're doing this in their free time, they're retired and they're doing this. And I just think like trying to have as many of those voices in there because I think that what a party can also ask of our volunteers can be a lot sometimes. And just taking that ownership, right? And trying to help people have more of a say and the grassroots have more of a say in what the party looks like has been really important, I think.
My co-host Gina sent a couple of questions that I thought were really thoughtful around how you like show up online with like messaging and with yourself. So like how do you decide like how hard to pull a punch, when to throw a punch, like with messaging? She was like, like you curse on the grid. And
Yeah.
and like does anybody ever, try to tone it
All the
down a little?
time. All the time. Like, truly, all the time, people are like, "Wait a can you do that?" And I was like, "I think so." And no one's gonna tell me not. Like, not no one. My own party is. And I don't know. I think my mouth is genuinely what can get me into trouble, but it can also be what got me in this job. And so I think it's like knowing to trust my gut, right, is important. But yeah, Liz, I do throw an F bomb in there every once in a while. Maybe more. I'll be honest with you. It's been more than once in a while now, too. It's like every other tweet. But it's always the Republicans. It's always because I'm pissed off. I'm just sitting there like, I could let them say this or I could not. And I choose violence today, apparently. Like,
But I mean, I do think that's what people are saying they wanna see. I think it also feels like an authentic and real reaction for me. Like, it doesn't ever read as, like, I'm putting on some kind of
no comms team
front.
approved it. No comms team approved it.
You're
And
like,
that's what it screams sometimes. And also, my comms team sometimes screams. They're like, the fuck, Anderson? Like, no. Someone literally, I'm not kidding with you. One of them texted me the other day and they were like, stop arguing with trolls on the internet. And I was just like, I'm having the best time of my life right now. Please excuse me. Like, and it had like 5,000 likes. I was truly just trying to make a point to this kid Gabe on the internet who claims to be like his turning point. I don't know, some man that was making fun of a friend of mine from the Young Dems in Ohio, okay, on the internet. And I was just sitting there like, I could let him ratio her or I could not. I choose today to not. And it just, but it was one of my most like liked random tweets of the last little bit. And I was like, why on earth is this getting 5,000 likes on the internet right now? Like, I'm just trying to shit talk a little bit. So to your point, it's been interesting to see like what has done numbers, I think, for like responsives to people. Like I think people do want to see a little bit of a spicier, like they want to see people punch back a little bit more instead of just like, we're just gonna let this slide, you know?
that feels called for and it feels wanted. It also feels like in some ways very much in tension with like being a young woman who is also a public facing leader, trying to figure out how to have that voice when folks maybe are like, "Hmm, I think women should be quieter than that."
Yeah, I do. It is hard when like Democrats, like if I've got a Democrat that's coming in there being like, should you? And I was like, I need you to understand that everybody's going to have their own way. And like what works for me is honestly not going to work for everybody, right? I would never expect a state representative maybe to get on there and talk like that. Maybe some of them would, I don't know. But like I don't think that it's necessarily like the vibe of everybody. I think it needs to be the vibe of the person though that's got to be leading a party to push back against an admin that's like we're willing to disenfranchise people from the right to vote, like is willing to strip away human rights from people, is trying to actively do so at the Supreme Court level, roll back rights, and also in our congressional representation right now, trying to steal representation right across states, like we're seeing in Texas. And I think it's pushing back against a party that's decided they also have no rules.
I think we're seeing that that is something that people are responding to because at the end of the day, they don't like it when it seems like we're rolling over either, you know? How are you staying motivated when this news cycle that we find ourselves in feels overwhelming?
I don't think I have it as hard as civil rights leaders had it in history, to be honest with you. I think that all we're asking people to do right now is to show up and to stand up against people that are taking people off the streets and not doing it with a warrant or any reason to do so. We are asking people to stand up against people losing access to a doctor for the first time in your communities. We're asking you to stand up against folks losing the right to vote. And I don't think that's a very hard thing to ask people to do. I think that we saw people having to fight for human rights for such a long period of time that this is sort of nothing to me in the line of what you read about in history books, or at least before Donald Trump became president, what you did read about in history books. And I just think that the importance of remembering that of the fight itself is not as hard as it has been for people that have had to do these fights to begin with and the first time. And so like we're having to just keep that motivation going. And there are so many people right now that are doing that at every level. And I think that it is a privilege to me in some ways to be involved with fights like this. And I don't know, it keeps me motivated. It keeps me thinking about politics all day, which I think is sort of an anomaly. But I think about organizing 24/7. It's sort of like I'm thinking about what person I need to call and ask for money. And we've got a gap in a program here. And I've got a county party that's struggling with X, Y, or Z. And this is what's going on. And this region of the state, and oh, we need to be talking about this too. And it's just like, I don't know, I think it's consistent, you know, but I also know it is for a lot of people. And I also think about it like I'm a privilege as a party chair. Dalton and Kimberly, when they were talking about this earlier, they were talking about how they work two jobs right now and also are a council person in their district. And I think about how grateful I am to be in a job that pays me to do this work and that think about it like that 24/7. And I have so many people across the state right now that don't get that opportunity. My state legislators in Raleigh make $13,000 a year and maybe they get a per diem a day, but it still doesn't amount to being a full salary of what it would take to actually live in Raleigh or even work in communities across this state. And then you're also asking them from the mountains to drive 3 and 5 hours in from the furthest parts of North Carolina or from the east to be able to do that too. And it just puts a barrier on who can be involved with government. And that's why also government doesn't work for many people, is because working people aren't able to always be a part of it. And the ones that do and that are right now are killing themselves. Like thinking about Lindsay Prather, a state representative out of Buncombe County, who just works her ass off to be able to do that job, and also another one. And I think that, you've got young people like Jordan Lopez who have had to do that same thing this year. And it's just difficult for them to make ends meet and also be in public office. But yet we need so many more people like them in it. And that's my job, is to figure out how to make this party a place that like can support those folks and make sure that they can. So I don't know. That's how I stay motivated, is because other people have it a whole hell of a lot harder than I do, Liz, in some sense in this. And I know that that sounds terrible, but I'm just like, it keeps me motivated to be like, you need to earn the fact that you're still here and that you're doing this work and that people can see that too. Because I think that folks need to.
I appreciate that perspective, and, like, yeah, you're right, and I think about pictures I've seen from, civil rights protests of dogs being sicked on, Black organizers and activists, and
And that's like what person, like, because I understand too right now, it feels that way for immigrants in this country. They're like, well, dogs are being sicked on me because ICE is being sicked on me. Like, what do you know what I mean? Like, I think
Mhm.
it's a very privileged take to have too, but I'm just like,
But it is
this work right
it's
now.
your perspective.
Yeah, and that's where I think I get to the point where I'm like, I need other people to understand, like, it can always be worse than where we are, and, like, that's hard. I think that's hard also to be a motivating thing, right? I think I could have looked at you and said, like, "Oh, I'm motivated by, like, building a better America," and I'm like, "Sure, I am," but I'm also like, I'm motivated by the fight itself and just, like, what it's gonna take to get us out of the situation that we're in, because it's one that I feel like we also put ourselves in by not working hard enough to keep fundamental freedoms. We backslid because we took a lot of things for granted and we just thought that this was not something that we had to consistently and continuously fight for. And it's just like, no, we always do. And I think that's where I'm at personally with that right now.
Hey, we got a long fight ahead, so, like, truly whatever can fuel you and fill your cup, like, I am so all for it, within reason, without violence. So, obviously, touched on it before, youngest state party chair in the country. What is the most Gen Z thing about your leadership style?
How much I'm on the internet. I go back to what I said earlier. Sometime I think my comms team would be like, oh, a little less of that if you don't mind, girlfriend. But it's what makes me me. And I run all of my social media accounts. And so it's like when you're communicating with me, you're communicating with me. And sometimes for most like elected officials, quote unquote, right? Like it's another person in their team that's also responding back to you, that's maybe like modeling as them. And if you don't know this, I'm sorry, I'm pulling the curtain behind, or pulling back the curtain and letting people know that. But like a lot of members of Congress do not run their own social media accounts, or like a lot of state legislators have their LAs, or they've got someone on their campaign doing it. And so it's like, for me, it's been very fun for people to like DM me and be like, "Oh my god, you responded to me." And I'm like, "Yes, because this is also my Instagram. Like it is my personal account that has now become this like thing." And so I think that's been fun, and that's been the funniest part about my job too, is I'll surprise people a bit about that.
Okay, so we both know that campaigning is stressful, and so I'm curious if you have a go-to comfort food or late night snack or cookout order after one of your exceptionally long days.
Yeah, God, my cookout order would definitely be a barbecue sandwich tray with a corn dog and Cajun fries, and either a huge Arnold Palmer or a cheer wine. It depends on how I feel that night. And then maybe if there's like like a snack for the road, if you're ever doing like a canvas and you're like, I'm craving a little something. What am I gonna eat? I love salted peanuts. And then I'm also a very big fan of Twizzlers, because I'm like, both of those two things will not melt in your car when it's hot. And they will also just be a good little like sustenance for you. The peanuts will give you energy, and the Twizzler will give you that just a little bit of sweet that you need.
Oh, I love it. Like the this will not melt in your car. Always important for canvassing adventures.
Wintertime, you can go wild, but, like, if you're in North Carolina, the summer will like, I couldn't tell you to pick up one piece of chocolate because I'm just like, it will not unless you're gonna eat it right then and there in a grocery store or at a gas station, I'm like, I wouldn't if I were you. It gets all over. It's just not helpful. Clipboards galore, you know? Take it from someone who loves Reese's. Like, it's just not a thing that I would suggest.
So, next one, who is on your, like, hype playlist right now?
I am a big Post Malone girly. I don't know why, but like truly, when Allison Riggs won her Supreme Court race finally, and it had been confirmed, and Republicans and Jefferson Griffin had admitted it, "Congratulations" by Post Malone is always what I play. Like it's like, they never say congratulations. Like it's just sort of like they may never say it to you, but like here you are. And I just think it gets me in this place of like we're always an underdog, and that's sort of my vibe. But also, Khalid is coming out with a new album, and I'm so ready for it. I cannot wait to save my life.
And then do you have, like, a TV show or a podcast or, like, a guilty pleasure reality series that you turn to when you're like, "Okay, it's time for a mental break, Anderson."
I watch Love Island. I hate to admit it, but I'm like, I'm out there and I'm in it, right? Like it's a whole thing, but that would definitely be my guilty pleasure. And then Survivor, whenever it's on, I love watching that. Survivor really reminds me of politics. Like if you want to be like, what's a reality show that I could get into that would also not be like Parks and Rec or that wouldn't have the vibe to it that it was like you were watching a political show. Survivor to me is 100% a political show. And if you don't think about it like that, you did not see John on the last season from Pod Save. So
Yes, yes, I love Survivor. Love that, it looks like somebody from your hometown is gonna be on this fall.
yeah, no, Sage. I was so surprised. I went to high school with her and she's a few years older than me, so I didn't actually have any classes with her or anything. But I was like, oh my God, Roxborough is gonna be on national news. I loved it. And honestly, it reminded me, I was like, that's what people must think when they're like, oh, Anderson's on MSN, like Roxborough is on national news, because that's exactly how I felt when I saw her gonna be on there. So
Honestly,
I'm ready.
I was so excited when John Lovett was on a couple seasons ago because it was like a crossover of 2 passions.
No, truly him, and then Eliza Orleans is also someone that's gone on there, and she ran for one of the races in New York. I followed her on Twitter for forever, and so it's just fun to see. I love that. To me, I wish we could make like a political Survivor. I think it would be so funny to see so many people from across the country be like, "Okay, let's go to Fiji, everybody. How about it?"
I love it. I need bathrooms and I need like 1 square meal a day.
Thank you. No, thank you.
I'm gonna need some coconut and some rice and some cooked fish that I did not cook myself. Yeah. But no, love that show. I am on Love Is Blind UK season 2 right now, so, I'm right up there with you with the trash choices.
It's like a franchise, right? Like Love is Blind, Love Island, Perfect Match. I mean, like truly, that's a vibe. That's a vibe when you're just like, I've got 30 minutes at night before I really want to shut my eyes and go to sleep, maybe. And I just need something to take my mind off politics.
Yeah, mine is like I'm in my little chair and I'm gonna close my eyes while I watch this probably, but I'm gonna watch this for like 1 episode. Okay, last thing, rapid fire, this or that, cookout tray or Bojangles biscuit,
Oh, cookout try.
bluegrass festival or EDM show,
Bluegrass.
handwritten thank you notes or texting thank you with lots of emojis,
Probably for time texting. Thank you.
early voting or election day,
Early voting.
sweet tea or cheer wine,
Those your one.
Tar Heels or Wolfpack.
Mountaineers, Appalachian State.
Fair. Well, that is gonna give away the answer to mountains or ocean views.
Now, Liz, you're gonna make people come for me with that one. I do think mountains. I do prefer. It's like something about something that is so big that makes you feel so small, right?
Those mountains are really special mountains, I maintain, especially for those of us who have, like, any Scotch or Irish heritage to speak of. It's, like, the same fucking mountains, and our souls just know it, and I believe that. Uh, Um, would you prefer Instagram stories or Twitter threads?
Oh, what Twitter threads, honestly. If Twitter was still Twitter, you know what I mean? Like if it wasn't bot land like it is kind of now, but
It is, but we will still refer to it as Twitter, forever and in defiance of that fact.
again.
And then 2028 presidential nominee, Wes Moore or Andy Bashir?
Maybe Pritzker.
Oh, all right.
Just think this he doesn't get involved in primaries, nor will we ever. But I do thank him for community dinner, and he really has surprised me in how he's done so much for states across the country. I just think he's really interesting. I don't know. Every time I hear him talk, I'm like, okay, okay.
I liked hearing him talk at Unity Dinner. He felt very relatable for a billionaire. He really had an understanding of a working class perspective and the genuine problems facing folks who have to count their money.
Yeah, truthfully, I thought it was so cool. On his website, it just has volunteer on it, and I realized, like, oh, that's because you could just pay for your own campaign, and in some ways, I'm really into the idea of, like, a president that can't be bought, you know what I mean? And, like, if you can buy yourself, that's kind of, like, better than having, like, billionaire donors. I don't know, there's something about that angle of it to me, but I also feel like I'm being bad because I'm not into a Southern governor like an Andy Bashir, so I also feel like I'm disavowing my homeland here, and that's not also what I wanna do, but I
And it's
don't
okay.
know, I'm
Pritzker
really
did come and visit us, and so we're very appreciative of that. I do live in Andy Bashir, and I mean, like, I think Wes Moore has some like all American like appeal that I'm like, maybe that dude.
No, any of them like, that's the thing, Westmore would also be amazing. He came and did a killer speech for the presidential campaign last year in Durham and is also just, like, I don't know, I think got a good profile for being a governor that gets shit done, you know? So, I like it.
Yeah. Well, cool. Thank you. I will not make you sit here and listen to me doing the outro. Thanks for joining us for this episode of the Foxfire Dispatch. If today's discussion lit a spark, help us fan the flame by sharing this episode with your neighbors or dropping us a note on social or emailing us at thefoxfiredispatch@gmail.com with your questions, stories, and ideas for bringing about a better South. We put out episodes weekly on Fridays, and if you like our content, you can find us at the Foxfire Dispatch on Instagram, YouTube, and Blue Sky, and Foxfire Dispatch on TikTok and Twitter, aka The Mad Place. Until next time, remember, we are who we're waiting for. Now go get in some good trouble.